Hey, my name is Alec Wenzel, and today I'm doing a super short lesson on a blues riff that is great for everybody. This is a blues pattern that's kind of universal and it forms the basis for a lot of other blues riffs, but it's great for beginners because it really helps you outline on the neck where your ones, fours, and fives are. I think it's also great for advanced players too because it's something that you can kind of work on improvising around or work on sort of trading with yourself between a riff and a lead. And so, yeah, it's a great riff for everyone, and I think it's a great practice tool that everyone can try. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to play it at my speed up front in a few seconds here in a little bit of a jam track format, but I'm just going to kind of go twice through it. Shouldn't be longer than 30 seconds. And then after that, we're going to slow it down, and I'm going to show you all the parts kind of individually. I'll also have some tabs up on screen. They're not going to be super high quality. They're just going to be my handwritten tabs. But with context from the video, everything should make total sense. Again, my name is Alec Wenzel, and thank you so much. I'm going to show you this stuff here in just a second. Hey, again, my name is Alec Wenzel. We just got past that jam. If you're still watching the video, please like and subscribe. It's free to you, and it goes a long way in helping me out and making sure that the channel can keep going, and it just gives me a lot of momentum and a lot of encouragement. So if you're enjoying the content, you watch the jam, you're excited about learning this blues riff, then just please give me a quick like and subscribe. It really helps me out. All right, now back on to learning this blues riff. All right, and that was the riff. So what I did there was I played a simple 12-bar blues riff twice through. The first time, I was just showing what it's like to practice the riff all by itself. The second time through, I showed you what it was like to practice that riff as though you were pretending to trade with yourself. I would play some lead and then go back to rhythm, and what we're practicing there is introducing leads while providing a background for ourselves and keeping time and keeping the form, right? And I'll talk about how to practice that a little bit later too. I'm going to put the PDF of the form up on the screen really quickly. Here it is up on the screen. Feel free to screenshot it. Feel free to screen grab it so you can follow along. All right, and now we're going to go back to me. So what I did there was I played a 12-bar blues in A, right? And so our form started by playing that riff starting from A at the 5th fret of the low E, and we do that 4 times to represent our 4 bars. Then we go to 2 bars of D, we shift down a string to play that same riff, right? It's the same shape all the way through. We'll get into that in a second. Then we go back to do another 2 bars of our A chord. Then we shift over to do 1 bar of our E, then we do 1 bar of our D, and then we go back for 2 bars of our A. And that finishes out that form. Now I'm going to talk about how to play through this riff, where my hands were specifically. And I'm going to put sections of that PDF that I just posted up on the screen somewhere near my head, so hopefully you can kind of see the tab along with where I'm putting my hands. And I'll say the fret names out loud, but as I had said a few minutes ago, this is a blues in A, and we're kind of using our A minor pentatonic scale to derive these positions. And this is our A minor pentatonic scale. It would go 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. So that was just from our low E to our high E in one position. And we're getting our 1s, our 4s, and our 5s from different points in that scale. And you'll sort of see where that is in a second. So the first part of this riff is an A chord, right? Or an A shape, right? Or it's a riff that starts from our A note, from our 1, right? And that is going to be on the 5th fret of the low E string. And the pattern that we were playing is 5, 5. And then we were shifting down a string to the A string, and we're playing 7, 7. And then we were shifting down to the D string, and we were playing 5, 5 again. And then on the D string again, we were playing 7, 7. So all together, E string, 5, 5. A string, 7, 7. D string, 5, 5. D string, 7, 7. And then it sounds like this. And playing it 4 times there, right, is our just 4 measures of A, right? Our 4 measures of 1 that would start out the beginning of any 12-bar blues progression. So now that we've played 4 measures of our 1 chord, the next part of our 12-bar blues form is playing 2 measures of our 4 chord. And in this case, since we're playing a blues in A, that will be D. In order to play the D section, shift that pattern that we just learned down 1 string. So when we had played that pattern before, it had started on the low E in the 5th fret. In order to play our 4 chord, we're going to shift down to starting on our A in the 5th fret. So here's how that pattern goes. We're going to play 5th fret of our A string, 7th fret of our D string, 5th fret of our G string, and 7th fret of our G string. So now playing that pattern all together, it'll go 5, 5, 7, 7, 5, 5, 7, 7. 5 on A, 7 on D, 5 on G, 7 on G. Now here's what those 2 measures of the 4 chord sounds like. So now that I've played those 2 measures of the 4 chord, I'm going to play the first 6 measures of our 12-bar blues. So here we go. Here's our first 4 measures in A that we just learned. Two measures of D. Alright, so now so far what I've shown you is how to play the pattern for our 1 chord, which is our A. I've showed you our 4 chord, which is D. And now I'm going to show you how to play 1 measure of E. Now E, again, is super easy. It's the same pattern, but this is the first time we're sort of shifting out of that A minor pentatonic scale I told you about at the beginning, right? So far we've been very inside of it, but now we are shifting 2 frets forward, and it's going to be on our A string. So our 5 chord will be from the 7th fret of the A string, and it's going to be that same pattern, except the numbers changed slightly since we shifted forward 2 frets. So 7th fret of our A string, then it's going to be 9th fret of our D string, 7th fret of our G string, and then 9th fret of our G string. So here we go again. 7 on A, 9 on D, 7 on G, 9 on G. So that pattern is going to play the exact same way all the other ones have. It's going to go like this. 7, 7, 9, 9, 7, 7, 9, 9. And there we go. We got our 5 chord. And so now, to finish out the pattern, we would go 5 chord, 4 chord, and then finally our 1 chord for 2 measures. So now, here's that whole thing together. Here's our 1 chord for 4 measures. Then we have 2 measures of our 4 chord, which is D. Back to 2 measures of our 1 chord, A. Now shifting 2 frets forward on our A string, we're going to play 1 measure of our 5 chord, which is E. Then shifting down, 1 measure of our 4 chord. And then finally, 2 measures of our 1 chord again. Alright, now I'm going to play the pattern all the way through for you one time. And that's the whole pattern. There we go, right? We've learned each part of it, and now you should be able to practice it that way on your own, right? Work on getting each section separately and work on sort of making them smooth for yourself. Don't worry about connecting them right away, right? Practice one part, then move on to your 4 chord and practice what that feels like. Then practice switching between 1 and 4 smoothly, and then see if you can incorporate moving up to playing the 5 chord and getting the whole pattern together. So now that we've talked about how this whole basic pattern works, let's talk about some of the fancier things you can kind of do with it. Now this is sort of referencing the second half of that intro jam that I played a little earlier, where I was trading licks with myself and moving between playing licks and then going back to playing that rhythm riff. That first thing that you can kind of do is just put a 5 chord in the last measure of this whole pattern, right? And it says that on the little image that I said you could screen grab that had the whole pattern written on it, right? And just above that 12th bar, it says 1 or 5, right? And the 1 chord pattern is written there, but you can throw a 5 chord pattern in there at the end to bring it all the way back to 1 again. Lots of blues progressions do this, and lots of blues progressions play it the way that we just did, right? But you should be aware of both and be able to kind of do both, so that if you were to like hear it when you were playing with someone else, you could throw that in. So I'm going to play it really quickly here. I'm just going to play like those last 2 bars as though I were putting a 5 chord in at the end, right? So this is basically bars 11 and 12. I'm going to play the A pattern and then the E pattern, and then I'm going to go back to the A pattern as if I were starting over again, right? Here's what that sounds like. And we're back at the top. This is our 4th measure. There's D. Back to 1. And there you go, right? 1, 5, 1. So that's an easy thing to do, and it's something that you should practice after you have the whole basic pattern down, where you're just playing the 1 chord at the end. So now let's talk about the other little advanced thing that I was doing, and that was trading between rhythm and lead, right? And so what I was able to do there was play licks over a chord and then switch back to playing the rhythm when I was at a sort of different section of the form. And the way that I chose to do this was just playing lead over the 1 chord. I played lead for 4 measures of the 1 chord, then I went back to playing the riff for those 2 measures of D, or my 4 chord, right? And then as soon as I was back into the A chord, I had kind of gone back to playing those lead sounds. This is an easy way to break it up, right? You could play lead over the whole form as long as you're able to keep track of it in your head, but a great way to practice that idea is just playing lead over specific chords. You can choose to play lead just over the A chord like I did, or you could choose to play lead over, 4 and 5 and then keep the rhythm going when you're on 1, right? These are popular ways to make the form feel grounded if you're doing both, right? If you're filling both roles as a lead player and a rhythm player. This is also something that'll just make you a stronger lead player in general. Then you're purposefully placing licks that you kind of know belong there, with intention, right? Because you've practiced doing it. You've practiced switching between those 2 points. So an easy way to get started doing this isn't just to play freeform lead, it's to pick a little riff that you know works for the same amount of time that you would be playing that rhythm riff. So I'm going to give an example of this real quick, right? I'm going to play 4 measures of the same thing for an A chord, and then I'm going to go back to playing our regular rhythm riff for the 4 chord. So here's what that would sound like. So what I had done there was I had just picked a simple lead part that was repetitive that I knew would fit over the A chord, and that always allowed me to sort of ground myself before I went back into playing the regular rhythm riff. Now, you can get more advanced with this and play a freeform riff like I did, knowing how long it'll last before going back into the 4 chord, right? So that would sound something like this. So right there, I had played something that was a little bit less riffy, a little bit more leady, right? And so you start to develop your own language around how this works for you by just practicing ideas like that, right? Trying to make them a little bit more advanced, a little bit less rhythmic, and a little bit more lead focused as you become more comfortable switching between playing the rhythm and then playing the lead. So those are two great ways to really spice up your basic chord progression that we learned in the first half of this video. I recommend trying to throw in that 5 chord as soon as possible, because that's really going to give things a sense of finality and make things feel like they kick off again when we start with the 1 chord at the top of the progression. If we end on an A chord and then we go right back into playing that same A chord to start the whole progression over again, then that's a lot of the same thing in a row, right? And it can feel kind of monotonous. And even though I said lots of blues progressions do this, and they do, we might not notice it because there's just more going on in the track. Throwing in that 5 chord can make things feel like there's more movement, and it can make things feel a little bit more exciting and like you're really marking the end and then starting over again. I recommend trying to do that as soon as possible. The other thing that we talked about is targeting specific sections with a lick while trading between roles of being a lead player and a rhythm player. And this is something that you have to be honest with yourself about and whether or not it's going well. And I know that I talked about playing over multiple chord changes because that's kind of what I did in that intro jam, but I would highly recommend starting with just targeting one measure. Just say to yourself, I'm always going to play a lick on measure 2 over that A chord, and then I will go back to playing rhythm. And I'm going to do that as many times in a row as I can until I feel really comfortable. And then as soon as you're always able to hit that measure 2 with a sweet lick, then start to expand, right? Then you say, okay, well, I'll play the first measure and then I'll play 2 measures of a lick before going back into playing the rhythm riff for the rest of the whole chord progression. And then just adding another measure of lead playing before going back into playing the rest of that chord progression. This is going to give you a lot more control over where you're putting your leads, right? You're not going to be noodling randomly. You're going to say, I've got a sweet lick prepared for right when that chord hits, and I know because I practiced it a dozen times just targeting that measure. And that's going to give you the ability to, play a little bit more improvisatorily in these, jam sessions that you go to, or when you're playing with your friends. And it'll also help you feel like you can hear the chord progression a little bit more, because as you target specific parts of it, that'll help you memorize where you are in the form. And it's just great for working on your lead playing overall. All right, and that was a quick lesson on a basic blues progression, and then how to spice it up as you practice that riff going forward. Thank you so much for watching. If you stayed all the way to the end, please like and subscribe. I'm really trying to grow the channel, and that kind of thing helps me out, makes me feel really great, and it gives me more momentum going forward to just be able to make more content and stuff like this. We talk about lessons, we talk about lots of gear, and we just sort of generally go over all things guitar. So if that's something you're up for, please again, give me a quick like and a quick subscription. It's free to you, and it helps me more than you could imagine. Again, my name is Alec Wenzel. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you back here for just more guitar stuff. Thanks so much.